Wrong microphone. You like that? I was turning up Nathan over here. Good thing he wasn't yelling at everybody. Listen to more into Lone Star here at IrelandStar.com. 9:03 is Meet the Candidate segment. And that was Clayton Gardner's with Think About Me. We're going to take this time all the way to 10 a.m. leading up to the Cindy Cochran Show to focus on local politics, folks. If you didn't know, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., we're doing Meet the Candidates with Nathan Arizati of Montgomery County Lifestyle.
Morning, dude.
Morning. You can ask all questions towards him, towards our candidates. He's the guy who vets the questions and all that stuff. You just go to Montgomery County Lifestyle on Facebook and write them in. Today we have a person who's running for Texas District 410 Judge. Oh, there's so many ways to word this. Yeah. Texas 410th District Court here in Montgomery County. We have Chuck Meyer. He's on Ballotpedia. I think that's the first person I've seen on Ballotpedia yet when you type in Google. I love Google. You just type in people's names. And especially when Cindy's involved, when the Cindy Cochran Show, she thinks everything on Google is still relevant. So she thinks these people post it that day.
And it could have been,
it could have been 10 years ago.
2009 or whatever.
Oh, yeah. It was hilarious. She was her special guest today is Dwayne Ham, who's been in the studio before, and she found, Dwayne's been involved with politics in Montgomery County for a while. She found some stuff from 10 years ago, and she thought he was running for, I think he was running for something a while back. So she's like, yeah, he's running for 9th District Court, all this kind of. I'm like, where is she pulling this information from? And I look over, and she's on Google, and she's like, this isn't what he's doing? And I'm like, that's not how Google works. It was pretty great. And but tune in for Cindy Cochran Show. You always have a good time with her. But we have Chuck Meyer in the studio. Chuck, how are you doing today?
Doing well, and thank you for putting this public service together. I think you're doing a great job for the community, not just in Conroe, but everywhere on the internet where people have an interest in these races.
To me personally, it's becoming a growth process, learning about how important each individual position, especially how important your vote is. It's kind of scary a little bit when you arrive to the ballot and you don't know what. I mean, it's go time.
Well, and a lot of times people don't even think about the judges. We're so far down the ballot, and I appreciate the opportunity to have the people know a little bit more about me, so that they go in the voting booth and hopefully voting for me because they have heard from me.
Well, I can tell you one thing I'd like to see happen, because we know that everybody's got those push cards and select cards mailed out and this and that. Guilty. I've been there before where I got in the ballot box and there was one or two slots that I didn't know anything about any of the candidates, and I just had to kind of guess. So I'd love to see the supporters of everybody out there, regardless of who the candidate is. Don't just say, vote for my friend John. He's the best candidate. Talk about why that position is important. Talk about why that needs to be something that people need to get educated on. It's a big deal.
Well, I'm constantly thinking of ways to promote awareness, and I come up with a good idea. Is y'all need to start making calendar shoots, and for your vote. I think that would be pretty entertaining. But just to let people know before we get into the Meet the Candidate segment with Chuck Meyer, check him out online, electchuckmeyer.com. That's elect, CHUCKMEYER.com. He's also on Facebook. Just type in elect Chuck Meyer. Let's get into a little bit about who you are, where you've been, and where you live, all that stuff. You don't have to give addresses or anything, but where do you currently reside? Here in Montgomery County?
I live down in South Montgomery County.
Okay.
You sort of have to live in the county in order to run
for
a judge.
Hey, we're trying to get you.
There's the first gotcha question.
I live in the Woodlands in the village of Panther Creek. I'm vice president of the Panther Creek Village Association Board. What else do you want to know about where I live? I came to Texas almost 21 years ago to work for Compact Computer. Moved to the Woodlands at that time, except for a brief period of time in which I was over in Hardin County. I've lived here and had a house in the Woodlands for 21 years. So,
oh, wow.
So I got here as quick as I could.
It is a great place to live in Montgomery County. Now, with that in mind, you're a lawyer, of course.
I am.
And I think, don't you have to be a lawyer to run for judge, or can you just randomly go, hey, I want to run for judge?
No, you can run for justice of the peace without being a lawyer.
Okay.
But otherwise, the statute requires that you be a lawyer.
And how long have you been practicing law?
I've been a lawyer since 1989.
Man, okay.
27 years.
So, sorry, keep going.
More or less.
More or less, 29 years. You actually
27.
27, sorry. I'm looking at your resume. You're on, if you go to elect Chuck Meyer, you can find out pretty much everything he's talking about right now. It's pretty interesting to see where you're coming from, especially it looks like you've been all around the country in a bit of a legal sense.
I have. And I've been international, and let me get into that a little bit. I was the chief legal officer of BlackBerry before it became BlackBerry Research in Motion from '96 to 2003, and that was probably the best gig I've had as a lawyer. Everything that came across my desk was I had to handle. I was the sole lawyer when I began with them. It was a startup company. I was the 67th employee. I was the sole U.S. employee. It's a Canadian company, so. You were going to ask me something?
No, it was funny, the rise and fall of BlackBerry. There's been some interesting cases with BlackBerry itself and legal departments and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was on the hot seat as the chief legal officer dealing with some of those cases, both as the aggressor and the victim, if you will. It requires, when you work for a high-tech company, you have to be always on and always connected to your client, which is the company. And
it was basically full. I mean, your payroll, everything was BlackBerry, correct?
Yes.
Like
I was the general counsel, chief legal officer, general counsel.
Mm-hmm.
You can have many titles. But in 2000, I went over to the business side, and I started up a startup within a startup, and that is BlackBerry Europe, just outside London, and I was the lead business leader, but I also was the general counsel, so I wore two hats. Nearly drove me insane trying to have enough time for my family, which you never can have enough time for your family, and it was a great experience to be able to lead a NASDAQ-listed company. It's a major subsidiary in their expansions. But that was in the days in which BlackBerry was at its heyday. And I left near the peak to my exit strategy, my midlife crisis, and I need to be careful when I say that. I went to Oxford as a graduate student in law and got a Master of Laws degree from Oxford University in England. I was already over there. I applied almost on a lark, didn't think that Oxford accepted me, and dang if they didn't. And I figured if they were good enough to accept me, I was good enough to attend. So,
yeah, they know what they're doing there.
Well, I'd like to believe that.
That's really funny that you're part of the European BlackBerry. One of the most interesting tech, not really hacks or anything, but there was some funny stuff going on with their equivalent to 911 on BlackBerry. I don't know if you know about this little thing. There was a rumor. I don't know why I'm bringing this up. It's just kind of funny. There's always a rumor in the UK that if you dial 911, it would charge your phone and your BlackBerry. And what it came down to is they had a preset in the BlackBerries that when your phone got to a certain battery life, it basically shut down outside of emergency calls.
It's true.
So when you dial 911, it would unlock that mode, and you can if you dial 911, cancel the call, and then you can make your phone call. And so it was one of the most interesting things because a lot of people didn't know. I think there might, I don't know if there's any lawsuits about that, but people were abusing the 911 calls. It wasn't 911 in the UK. I forgot what the number was.
It's 9. I think it's 991.
Yeah,
I believe
it's something very similar.
Yeah.
But that was one of the most weird things I ever read about BlackBerry and how people were abusing calling 911 all the time. But outside of the Europe, and you moved back here. When did you start getting into politics? Because to me, the transition between working at a company just like BlackBerry and then going, hey, I want to run locally for stuff or be involved community-wise. So when did that start?
Well, it's hard to say. I got very involved in Montgomery County politics only fairly recently. I've wanted to be a judge since 1989 when I clerked for a federal district court judge. Mm-hmm. He now sits in San Antonio. He didn't sit there when I clerked for him. He actually sat in Honolulu, Hawaii. And believe me, I was as pale when I left there as when I arrived because he worked the daylights out of me. We worked Monday through Friday and half a Saturday when he was quite the taskmaster, which really trained me well as a young lawyer to go into the practice of law. So I came. I got involved with my local community association a couple of years ago, and I ended up becoming a member of the Rotary Club in the Woodlands, as well as a member of the Knights of Columbus, to have some involvement with my community at the service level. And I also became a member of the South Montgomery Chamber of Commerce. I was hanging out my shingle, and I was out. One of the best ways to meet people is to be involved in politics. Mm-hmm. I've been involved in politics at the national level since I was in college. I'm a member of the Republican National Lawyers Association. In 2012, I worked with other Republican lawyers in Ohio to try to make sure that those that were entitled to vote voted, and those that weren't entitled to vote weren't allowed to vote. And both parties have teams of lawyers in key states in presidential election years to make sure the election laws are followed. And I was part of that team in Ohio in the 2012 campaign.
Now, is that based off like an invitation kind of thing or reputation?
No, not necessarily. I mean, we lawyers have to make some money and we have to practice law, and so it's a matter of whether or not your schedule can accommodate it.
Because I imagine that's volunteer.
It is volunteer.
So that's
pure volunteer.
That's what I mean. Like
it's taken from the Republican National Lawyers Association, which is a dues-paying organization. Mm-hmm. It's 501c3 or C4, I can't remember which. It's not a political organization. And those lawyers then are assigned, if they want to be, to the presidential Republican nominees campaign.
So that's coming up pretty soon for those folks. Are you going back into it?
No. I hopefully am going to be on the ballot in November, and I have my hands full with my own race to worry about the presidential election.
Yeah.
But so I don't think that I'm going to be able to do it this time. I miss it. I'll be
because I imagine
quite frank.
It's fun. I mean,
it's fun. You get to meet lawyers from all over the country. We descend on a state that's in play. You feel like if you win, you really feel like you've been part of the process. Yeah. And
if you lose, you're just useless. So I'm just kidding. We're sitting here with Chuck Meyer. He's running for 10th District Judge. We're going to take a quick music break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more with Chuck. Check him out online, electchuckmeyer.com. I'm sitting with Nathan Arizati, Montgomery County Lifestyle. So if you do have a question for Chuck, you can go through his Facebook on Montgomery County Lifestyle right there. We'll be back after this. Let's listen to some Cody Joe Hodges, One More Drink. You're listening to Mornings with Lone Star here at IRLoneStar.com, Montgomery County's community radio station.
Ever heard the term time is money? Well, at Marshall & Brown Accounting, they'll maximize your time and deliver real-time results, taking away the confusion and stress of protecting your valuable financial assets. Marshall & Brown Accounting will take that old shoebox full of receipts and provide you with a real-time, cloud-based, viable solution. Contact Marshall & Brown Accounting today at 832-412-7122 or visit Marshall & Brown Accounting at marshallandbrown.com.
Mornings of Lone Star. Meet the candidates, 923. Hanging out with Nathan Arizati at Montgomery County Lifestyle. And, of course, the man who's running for 10th District Judge, Chuck Meyer. Check him out online, electchuckmeyer.com, or on Facebook, Elect Chuck Meyer. Let's get back into it with Chuck. Basically, 410 is a non-specialized court, if I'm familiar with it. And you also had some more words to say about how these courts are specialized and not specialized. That's usually, and I'm only going off of what the political point of view is, because, when you go to these forums and you go listen to the public speaking by these folks who are running, they always have the hot buttons, the topics that they think you need to know because that will sway your vote because what they're saying is the right thing. So this is a two-part question for you. Can you respond to those hot buttons for the 410th? And then can you do any other topics that aren't being talked about that should be noted about the 410?
Happy to. Let's talk about this notion that these courts are either specialized or not. And I want to contrast the courts we have here in Montgomery County to the courts that we have down in Harris County. Now, recognize that all these are state courts. These are state district courts. They're not Montgomery County courts. They're not Harris County courts. They're state district courts. In Harris County, by statute, they have specified family law courts, criminal law courts, and they have also specified civil law courts. when you have a system like that, you lose flexibility because if there's an influx of criminal cases at any particular point in time,
they get bottlenecked because you're forced to go.
You can't borrow from and try to get a family law judge or a civil law judge to go over and take some criminal law cases. Now, are they entitled to under the statute? Yes, but it just doesn't happen because it's a very rigid system. We're in transition in Montgomery County. We're starting to grow up a little bit, and we have some specialized courts. By the judges have gotten together and have agreed that Judge Wood's court will take only civil law matters, and the Ninth will take only criminal law matters, in part because that enhances the expertise of the judges that occupy those benches. The 410th, Judge Mays is the current incumbent who's not running. That's why this seat is open. He has kept this court as a general jurisdiction court. So he hears matters in criminal law, family law, and civil law. But the Ninth, and you don't have to go back that far, Judge Edwards, when he was on the judge of the Ninth, he didn't take just criminal cases. He took all different types of cases, and particularly complex civil litigation cases. He was in his day and his time, he was one of the few judges who took the complex civil cases. So I want the voters to understand that when they hear these somewhat arcane arguments about should this be a specialized court or should it be a general jurisdiction court, some of my opponents keep saying that this court is something. Well, it isn't anything other than under this Constitution, they're all general jurisdiction courts. It's up to the judges collectively to decide what type of cases will be put into which courts, and that applies to all the courts. My background is strongest in the civil law area, and I'm also an assistant district attorney over in Hardin County for appellate matters, and I've also taken it upon myself to go through the Sheriff's Citizens Academy in order to understand how criminal justice is maintained here in Montgomery County. I think it's important. I wish every judge would judicial candidate would go through that process because it's really eye-opening to understand for the men and women who protect you 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, how they go about doing their work, doing their craft. So I've touched upon the general jurisdiction versus specialized jurisdiction. You lose flexibility if you have specialized courts. And I think in Montgomery County, quite frankly, we need specialized courts as well as general jurisdiction courts to handle the overflow. And I'd like to see the 410th stay a general jurisdiction court. At the very least, I'd like to see it focused on more civil law cases.
Well, the way you're describing it, it's not like you like it to stay. It's more of that's what you would make it when you became judge, correct?
Well, that's what I try to convince the other judges.
So you still have to go through that process as not convincing, but displaying your case about why to keep 410th general. Right. And that's when you say those judges, that's in Montgomery County, not the state.
It's the Montgomery County.
It's the Montgomery County.
And when also there is an administrative judge that Montgomery County is in his region, and he has a significant say in how the courts are structured.
So is there some type of judge luau party? And then everyone gets together and talks about
the judges, and I'm not talking about just the district judges, but the county judges as well, and the associate judges that have been appointed. They meet in a judges' meeting once a month at least.
Okay.
And so, one of my goals, and you asked me to talk about things that aren't being talked about, is to bring the judges together and let us work as a integrated unit. We have these silos called the 410th, the 9th, name the number of the court. We can't operate in these silos. We have to operate together. Now, Judge Wood just assigned 60 of her cases to County Court at Law Judge Laird, her civil law cases, because she has so many. And to me, it's senseless that we have to assign cases out of the district court to the county court at law in civil matters. We need judges who are able and willing to take those civil law cases. Those that are in the specialized courts, some of them don't want to take cases outside their comfort area, and they're all very good judges in my opinion. I would like some of them to work a bit harder than they seem to be doing, but the demand, particularly in the civil litigation area, for someone who understands business is incredible. I mean, we have Exxon bringing in a ton of employees in here. We have Anadarko. We have CB&I. We have Lane Christensen, well-regarded publicly traded companies. And I hear from my civil litigator friends that you can never get a trial in Montgomery County because it's so backed up, because the judges are dealing with criminal cases and family law cases, and they either don't or want to take those other cases, and they've specialized their bench so they don't have to, or they don't feel competent to take those cases.
Well, and I'm not going to ask you to call out any names, but that seems to be recurring small conversation at these forums that we're going to. Some of the people have been in here, is that there are several courts/judges that seem to have less than half or less activity than the rest of the courts. And how can that happen?
It can happen for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is because of the specialization of the courts, too. Another is it's sometimes a matter of perception. I'm a virtual attorney, and what I mean by that is that I don't virtually do work. I actually do work, but I don't have a brick-and-mortar office. I have a laptop. I have an office in my home, and I use a conference room down in the Woodlands when I need to meet with clients. There's nothing to say that a judge can't do a lot of his or her work in his home, off a laptop. There's no magic to being in the courthouse, except when you need to have enough time in the courthouse to schedule hearings, to have trials. But just because a judge doesn't appear on the days that he or she doesn't have scheduled hearings doesn't mean that they aren't still working for the public. And some of my opponents have made that perception that certain judges aren't around the courthouse a centerpiece of their campaign, and I'm tempted to say to them, look, I'm not running against those judges. I can tell you about my background in the 60 to 70 hour weeks I'd put in both in the high-tech community and when I'd work for judges. I'm dedicated to getting the job done and whatever it takes. But just because you don't see me in the courthouse, don't assume that I'm not working. There's so many things outside of trial and outside of hearings that a judge does that most people don't realize. I mean, when we think about judges, we think about what we see on TV, and that's in the courtroom. But the administrative burdens on judges are incredible. To keep your docket flowing and to keep the paperwork off your desk, you have to put in a ton of hours that are not reflected in court time.
So we need a 24-hour stream on you. That's what we need.
Well,
so we can check in with Judge Chuck Meyer. Like, what's he up to?
Body cam.
He's eating food. He's not working.
I'm playing with my dogs and having time with my family. Give me a break.
Your thumbs down, thumbs down. But, we're going to take another quick break here on Mornings Lone Star Meet the Cans. We're Chuck Meyer. And when we come back, we'll discuss a little bit more leading up to the Cindy Cochran Show at 10 o'clock. So we have plenty of time to take questions on Montgomery County Lifestyles Facebook with Nathan Arizade. So please stick around. Like I said, we're going to take a quick break. You are listening to Meet the Candidates on Mornings of the Lone Star here at irlonestar.com.
The caring professionals at Mona Laser Med Spa want to reveal your unique natural beauty with a customized treatment plan. Specializing in cosmetic laser resurfacing, chemical peels, and the popular skin pen procedure, Mona Laser Med Spa's low, affordable prices for Botox and fillers is guaranteed to put a smile on your face. 832-930-1650. Online at mona-laser.com. 13843 Highway 105. Mona Laser Med Spa.
All right, Stacey Whitson right there with Lonely Texas Cowboy. Mornings Lone Star. Meet the Candidates, 9:42. We're back in the studio, broadcasting live in downtown Conroe. Come by and check us out. We're right next to the Crichton Theater, also next to Conroe Coffee. I'm with Nathan Arizade of Montgomery County Lifestyle, taking questions and enjoying his presence all the time because he always wears really bright clothing. So I know, I have a beacon with me, so I know where to go all the time. And he's also color coordinated today, or color matching.
He's ready for St. Patrick's Day, isn't he?
No one's going to pinch me today.
We got Chuck Meyer in the studio. He's running for District Judge for 10th. And you can check him out online at electchuckmeyer.com. That's electchuckmeyer.com. We're going to be closing out the segment with him all the way to 10 o'clock. And, of course, Cindy Cochran Show will be on at 10. She's back, folks, so I'm so glad to have her back. But right now, we're going to be closing out with some questions I have for Chuck. We kind of talked about, kind of demonstrate what the court and kind of the hot topic button politically the 410th District Court has. One thing I'm always interested in is the future. So in the future of Montgomery County, there's a couple things happening everyone knows about. There's growth, and then there's money, and then there's hopefully diversity of delicious food, because I always like it. That's one thing I love about Houston, is you can find some delicious food in Houston. And so with Chuck being the judge, what do you see being a problem? Not a problem really, but I don't know how to word it positively, but in the future of the court system, and especially how Montgomery handles its courts. Tell me about how, if you were a judge, what do you see happening to the courts and things like that? Sorry, that's kind of a weird question.
No, that's okay. You're asking me basically to pull out my crystal ball and predict the future. But
as a lawyer,
and I'm happy to do that. I can tell you what trends that I see.
Mm-hmm.
I want to emphasize again, I'm a small business attorney these days. I help small businesses grow to be bigger by providing them with adequate legal help to get them to the next level. And the small businesses are the growth of our country. And we see a lot of small businesses coming into Montgomery County, particularly in the south part of the county, surrounding the ecosystem that is resulting from Exxon's move to northern Harris County and southern Montgomery County. Whenever you have a major industrial player coming into a region, a whole economic ecosystem develops, and there are spin-off companies, there are service companies, and they have legal disputes. They have legal needs. I think in my professional life I'm well-positioned, but I'd be well-positioned as a judge to deal with the increased burden on the civil law side of the court to resolve the disputes between individuals and businesses, whether it's between someone who owns a VW diesel Passat and the VW company, or between individuals in a personal injury case, or between businesses. I'm not just a business lawyer. I actually taught at the University of Houston and the University of Pittsburgh, and one of the courses I taught is the first year at the University of Houston was the first year course in torts. So I'm not unfamiliar with the civil law, the civil wrongs called torts that would come into play if in personal injury cases. And the plaintiff's bar should take note of the fact that there's someone that actually understands what a tort is that wants to go on the bench. So I see a trend there. As I mentioned before, I went through the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department's Citizens Academy, and I learned about the gang activity in Montgomery County, and that's not going to decrease. I mean, we can continue to fight them, but we're on the I-45 corridor, and that spawns a lot of crime. And my wife was a victim of crime a few years ago. She had her wallet snatched, and what did the people do with her credit card? They went to Macy's, and then they ended up down in Beltway 8 and went over to Greenspoint in a short period of time. And so as Montgomery County is growing, it's becoming richer. If oil prices go up, we'll become even better off than we are. One of the things that throughout the world, when there's economic downturns, civil litigation goes up. Companies try to try to enhance their bottom line, and if there's been a kerfuffle, a conflict between two companies in good times, sometimes they ignore it or they resolve it amicably and they settle it. But sometimes you need that money from that dispute, and you need a certain amount of money, and if you think you're in the right, you're going to take it to court. And in Montgomery County right now, you're not going to get a court date. So you're going to go down to Harris County. They're going to get the fees for the civil cases, so that's not going to go into our treasury to support our courts. And so I see an explosion of civil litigation. We're already seeing it. If you talk to Judge Wood, she'll tell you that, and as I said, she's already, as of yesterday, transferred some of her cases off her docket because she can't handle the cases that are coming in. And it's not because she's an inefficient judge. She's a very efficient judge. But there's that much demand. So in the criminal area, there's going to be continued great demand. And the problem with criminal law is we have this thing called the U.S. Constitution, which I highly respect and believe was divinely inspired, that we have to abide by. And we have to give criminal defendants and the victims in the state speedy trials for quick resolution. And so if you have to give speedy trials, they have to be first in line. There's no constitutional guarantee of a speedy trial in a family law matter, even though those are very severe matters, nor in family or civil law matters. And so I just see a continual burden on the court, and we need to get the whole court's act together and be as efficient as we possibly could be before we go to the state legislature, before we go to Brandon Creighton, Mark Kehoe, and Will Metcalf and Cecil, and say, hey, we need another state district court here. Because the argument is going to be, well, your judges aren't working through their dockets efficiently. You don't need another judge. You just need better judges or more efficient judges. So we need to get our act together so we can make a case that we need at least one more, if not two more, courts in Montgomery County, because it's not, the growth is not going to stop unless oil drops to $10 a barrel.
It almost did. So
yeah, but you can't. If I had a crystal ball that could predict what the oil price would be, I would not be running for a judge. I'd be plopping my money down on oil futures, either shorting them or going long. So who knows? We all enjoy the fact that when we fill up our tank of gas, that we're paying less than $20 maybe to fill up our tank of gas. But sometimes we need to pause and remember that our neighbor is now unemployed because the price of oil has dropped so low.
I lived around different places around the country, and they've always thought I was a weirdo when I had no problem paying more for gas than they wanted to, and it's because I'm from Texas and I know what that means.
Right.
So we got just a few more minutes, don't we, Dick?
Yeah, what I would like to take this moment for with Chuck Meyer is, if you don't mind, just this is your political campaign speech. Who are you? How do we help out? What's coming up? All that kind of stuff. So we'll give you the floor for about 3 minutes.
Well, let me start at this point in this segment that I want to talk about. What do we really want in a judge? What criteria should we use? And some states appoint judges. We in Texas elect judges. Other states elect judges as well. But, what do I as a voter want to see in a judge? And I went back and I looked at, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the story of Moses from the Bible, but his father-in-law, Jethro, said to him, because Moses was working from dawn to dusk, trying to resolve disputes among the people of Israel. And his father-in-law basically said to him, hey, Moses, you're going to burn out if you keep this up. You need to appoint other judges. So Moses laid out the criteria. He selected among his people people that were broadly and competently experienced. They had a deep faith in God. They had a sense of integrity, and they had an understanding of the truth. And I think those criteria work very well these days. It's the same criteria that we should use when we go to the voting booth. Now, I contend that I have the broadest and deepest experience in all areas of law than any of my opponents. I believe I'm competent. I'm the only candidate in the race that has a graduate degree in law. I also have a specialty. I am a registered patent attorney. That's not a Texas specialization. That's a federal specialization. And my evidence of my deep faith in God is I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus. I'm very much been involved in the pro-life movement. And I believe that a judge needs to come to the bench with a respect for God, but also for the Constitution. And the evidence I have for my respect for the Constitution is I'm a member of the Federalist Society of Law and Policy. And the Federalist Society is a group of lawyers who are dedicated to putting judges on the bench who believe in the original intent in the Constitution, who believe that when you read a statute, you don't insert your own belief of what that statute is. You use the plain word in the statute, or you look to the legislative history if the statute is vague. And overall, you look at in our case, the Texas and United States Constitutions. And then finally, in terms of sense of integrity, I take my obligations ethical obligations as a lawyer very seriously. When I was in law school, I was the prosecutor of honor code offenses in my final year. And I'm a member of the Texas Center for Law and Ethics, which is an organization that tries to create civility among lawyers and have lawyers treat the law with the utmost respect and to be practicing the craft of law with the utmost integrity. And so if you use the criteria that Moses used, I would be the logical candidate for this seat. I'm also a little different in that I'm not a trial lawyer. I'm a business lawyer. I've been in court. One of my opponents criticized me for never having litigated in Montgomery County, and there are two responses to that. One, where it's a state court. I have litigated elsewhere in the state. And two, I try to keep my clients out of court. I try to make sure that they don't go into court. My overall goal, wrapping up here, is for the entire court system to act as an integrated unit. I think we are suffering from the fact that we have dissension among the judges. We need to play together better. We need to work together better. We need to share resources better. We need to take advantage of the technology resources that we already have and bring in even more to make the whole court system very efficient. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chuck, for coming in. Nathan, good to see you.
Yeah.
What do we have lined up? We got about 30 more seconds, so tell us who's coming in on Monday. Do we have anyone lined up?
We do, and why would you ask me that when I don't have that page up?
Of course he doesn't. Just check us out on Facebook, Lone Star Net Radio, Montgomery County Lifestyle. See who's coming up next week. Coming up next is the Cindy Cocker Show special guest, Dwayne Ham. And we got to go to a break. Sorry, Nathan. And
you got to say Duke Coon Tuesday.
Oh, so you do know that. Okay,
Duke Coon
Tuesday. Well, we got to get going. We got to get Cindy Cochran in here. It's 9:55 coming up at 10. The Cindy Cochran Show here on irlonestar.com.
Thank you for checking out a podcast on Lone Star Internet Radio. Lone Star Internet Radio is Montgomery County's community radio station, broadcasting from the heart of Conroe, Texas. If you are interested in sponsoring a program for Lone Star Internet Radio, just visit us online at irlonestar.com or message us on Facebook. We are always taking song requests on Twitter, and if you are interested in getting involved with the station by either hosting your own show or if you want to be a DJ, just contact Dick at irlonestar.com. Lone Star Internet Radio, Montgomery County's community radio station.